So Kevin O'Leary, famous billionaire, he's on Shark Tank in the US, he's on Dragon's Den in Canada. Really famous guy, runs this whole O'Leary Funds, which is a very successful multi-billion dollar business. And last week he actually launched a brand new ETF, which is aimed at growth around the world, a global ETF. And today we're going to talk about what this ETF consists of, what's the purpose of this ETF, and if you should consider investing in this ETF. Welcome back to another video. Hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any new videos just like this. But getting right into it, like I mentioned, Kevin O'Leary, who runs O'Leary Funds, launched a new ETF, OGIG, which stands for O Shares Global Internet Giant Index. And that's a mouthful. And the purpose of this ETF is to give investors exposure to these large internet and e-commerce companies around the world. So as you know, companies like Amazon and Alibaba really dominate the North American and Chinese space. And what O'Leary wants to do with this particular ETF is capture the Amazons and the Alibabas off around the world. So like in South America, in Europe, Japan, whatever it may be, they want to capture these Amazons and Alibabas. Now, of course, this sounds very promising because if you've looked at Amazon or Alibaba's chart over the last few years, their growth has been absolutely phenomenal and they have absolutely no signs of slowing down. Full disclosure, I do own both Amazon and Alibaba in my portfolio. In fact, Alibaba is my #1 position because I believe that company is going to be one of the top 3 largest companies in the world very soon. So using this mindset, you would suspect that companies in South America, for example, who have the similar business model as Amazon and Alibaba, would also be thriving and growing rapidly. Now, although this may be the case, in theory, when I took a look at OGIG's holdings, I was a bit surprised as to what exactly this fund holds. So as you can see here from this graphic, the top 10 holdings, it pretty much consists of the most popular stocks in the market today. And these stocks are really from the US and China. It holds companies like Alibaba, Tencent, and JD, as well as the popular FANG stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. What's worse is that these top 10 holdings comprise of 44.67% of the overall fund. That means these top 10 holdings comprise of almost half of this ETF, and most people already hold these stocks in their portfolio as individual picks. Now, if you continue through the list here, you can see that they have companies like Snapchat, for example, and they even have companies like Twitter in there as part of their holding. Now, these are 2 companies that a lot of investors are very skeptical of, especially with their profit projections and all of that going forward. So a lot of investors would be turned off from this ETF just because it holds a portion of Snapchat and Twitter. Now, if you want to take a look at all of these holdings, which I would strongly recommend if you are seriously considering investing in this ETF, I'll leave a link in the description below where you can go to their website and you can see all of the holdings that this ETF consists of. So another aspect I did not like personally was how this ETF is called a global ETF. But if you look at the breakdown here of the holdings around the world, you can see that the US and China make up 86.14% of the holdings. So now I'm not sure about you, but when a global ETF comes out, I would suspect that it would be more global and it would have equal holdings around the world in places like South America, like I mentioned, Europe, Japan, South Asia, pretty much around the world like a global ETF should be. Now, if you're still considering this ETF, the last thing we need to talk about here is the expense fee that they charge. So I was surprised to see that they charge actually a pretty fairly high fee for an ETF. It comes in at 0.48%. And if you plan to hold this ETF for the long term, that's going to be a good chunk of your gains that's going to be taken out from your portfolio. Now, if you're looking for a growth ETF, another one to consider may be VUG from Vanguard, and they have a more reasonable 0.05% expense. VUG, if you're not familiar, is a growth ETF that Vanguard offers. It does consist of more companies, but you do get exposure to a lot of growth companies, especially in the US. Now, if you're looking at ETFs and you like investing in ETFs, typically what I would do, and a rule that I follow, which is not set in stone, but it's something that I really recommend, is look for expense ratios of 0.05% or lower. That way you're not paying a good chunk of your gains in expenses. But anyways, getting back to OGIG, am I a fan of this ETF?
I've been working on it for a year.
Well, honestly, based on the facts we've just gone through, I feel that this is more of a gimmick ETF than an actual substantial global growth ETF. The fact that it's called a global ETF, but 86% of its holdings comes from the US and China, it should be called a US-China ETF with a sprinkle of Canada, Japan, and Europe. Now, if you had the capital and you're in a position where you don't have to go with ETFs because you do have substantial amount of money you want to invest, you could just go and purchase the top 10 holdings and purchase Shopify, and that would give you pretty much most of the exposure that this ETF gives you to US, China, and Canada. But I'm curious, would you guys consider this ETF in your portfolio? And is this an ETF that you've heard of before of this video? Let me know in the comment section down below. But I also want to mention that we do have a Facebook group, Positive Investing, and we have been discussing this ETF in that Facebook group. So if you're not part of that group yet, make sure you join. I'll leave a link in the description as well as in the comments section. And you can join these discussions before I make videos on this. So it's great input, you get my input, you get other people's input. And in just over a couple of weeks, we have more than 100 members in the group. So make sure you join. There's a lot of good things coming to that group, a lot of exclusive stuff coming to that group. So go ahead and join now. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to invest positive.